Let's just dive right into this explainer and transport ourselves back to a time when everyday life was, well, infinitely more fragile. I want you to literally imagine the sensory reality of the past. Think about the constant, inescapable smell of wood smoke hanging in the air, those tightly packed wattle and daub houses, the narrow, winding dirt streets. In that kind of environment, our most chaotic discovery, fire, was a constant, terrifying threat to everyday survival. So today, we're going to explore humanity's millennia-long war against the flames and look at how this massive civilizational struggle shaped the very fabric of the modern cities we live in today.
It's a genuinely terrifying thought, isn't it? Historically speaking, there was absolutely no 911 to call, no sirens wheeling in the distance to save you. For the vast majority of human history, your only defense was, well, your neighbor's leather bucket, or honestly, the desperate, panicked hope that your own house wouldn't be intentionally torn down by the community just to make a fire break. Let's look at how ordinary people actually managed to survive this incredible vulnerability.
Section 1. The ever-present threat. The sensory reality of early urban survival. You know, the fear of fire was woven so deeply into everyday human psychology that it actually birthed words we still use right now. Take the word curfew. Today, we think of it as like a parental rule or maybe a civic restriction on movement. But it originally began as a desperate preventative fire code. It comes from the French couvre-feu, which literally means to cover the fire. It was a strict nightly mandate, often enforced by the ringing of town bells, requiring everyone to extinguish or cover their hearths so the whole town wouldn't just be annihilated while its citizens slept. Crazy, right? Section 2. Ancient Inventions and Regressions, from the Roman Vigiles to the Dark Ages. Now, I want you to notice the massive gap in time on this timeline. The Greeks and Romans actually engineered some incredible solutions. Way back in the 3rd century BC, Xenobius invents a double-piston hydraulic fire pump in Alexandria, and by AD 6, Emperor Augustus had set up the Vigiles, a massive 7,000-man professional municipal fire brigade patrolling the streets of Rome at night. But then, it's just gone. As the Roman Empire collapsed, this highly organized civic infrastructure, along with all that knowledge of advanced hydraulic pumps, completely vanished during the medieval period. It's a total technological dark age. And honestly, even with those early pumps, the Roman Vigilists often had to make some absolutely brutal, calculated decisions. This quote reveals a really stark historical contradiction. Sometimes saving a city meant violently sacrificing large parts of it. The Vigilists didn't just bring water. They literally brought military siege engines, like catapults and ballistas, to demolish burning buildings and create immediate fire breaks. It was a ruthless but highly effective form of urban triage. Section 3. The Desperate Bucket Brigade, the Chaotic Anatomy of Medieval Survival. Okay, so the crucial thing to understand here is that this wasn't about saving a single home anymore. It was a chaotic, absolutely desperate collective effort to save the entire town. When a fire broke out, church bells were rung backward. Just imagine that frantic, unnatural sound to signal disaster. The whole community would form double human lines, frantically passing heavy leather buckets from a well to the fire and passing the empty buckets back down. And if throwing all that water wasn't enough, they defaulted to tearing down their neighbor's burning home with massive iron hooks just to starve the fire of fuel. Let's take a look at their pretty meager toolkit. They had customized leather buckets, highly inefficient brass hand squirts that held maybe a couple of liters of water, and those 15-foot thatch hooks I just mentioned. But I really want you to look at those last 2 points. This work required terrifying proximity to radiant heat and choking smoke. Firefighters used wet blankets, sponges soaked in vinegar, and tradition even says that some men would literally stuff their own soaking wet beards into their mouths just to filter the air. I mean, that is a profound testament to human resilience and desperation for sure. Section 4. The Great London Catastrophe. The Birth of the Economic Contradiction. 13,200. That is the staggering number of houses devoured over just 4 devastating days during the Great Fire of London in 1666. It was a complete civilizational trauma. But interestingly, from those literal ashes emerged a completely new concept designed to mitigate risk: the birth of private fire insurance. Enter the fire mark. Following the Great Fire, financial speculators like Nicholas Barbin started forming the very first fire insurance companies. And to protect their investments, they hired Thames watermen to form private fire brigades. So picture this. When a building caught fire, these private brigades would rush to the scene and frantically look for their specific company's metal plaque on the wall. If it wasn't their mark, or if the building was uninsured, they might just stand there, arms crossed, and watch it burn to the ground. And this represents a deep, fascinating historical contradiction. On one side, early insurance brigades were driven entirely by private profit. It was a model of protecting financial assets that honestly sometimes bordered on extortion, literally demanding proof of payment before a single drop of water flowed. On the other side is our modern expectation, a municipal fire service that acts as a universal public good, free to all citizens, prioritizing human lives over property. The journey from the left side of this slide to the right side, well, it took centuries.
Section 5. The Scientific Fire Revolution, Shifting from Defense to Offense.
Just look at the monumental technological leaps mapped out here. It's like watching human progress in fast forward. Notice how we evolved from crude human labor powering the Hellenistic force pump, all the way to the mechanical advantages of the Newsham manual engine in 1721, which finally allowed for a continuous stream of water. And then boom, we hit the Lotta steam fire engine in the 1850s, a machine that completely removed exhausting human muscle from the pumping equation altogether.
Now, this represents a massive paradigm shift in everyday survival. In 1672, a Dutch painter and inventor named Jan van der Heyden stitched rawhide leather tubes together to create a 50-foot flexible hose. I know a hose sounds simple, but before this, firefighters basically had to stand outside and just chuck water at the exterior of a building. Van der Heyden's leather hose was an absolute game changer. It finally allowed crews to safely enter buildings and attack the core of the fire directly. Oh, and fun fact, he didn't just invent the hose, he also designed a comprehensive street lighting system for Amsterdam, making it the best-lit city in Europe and drastically reducing nighttime hazards. Talk about a guy who hated the dark and the flames.
Section 6. The Modern Resolution. Steam power and the professionalization of public safety. The steam-powered engine is a perfect example of how technology shapes society. It didn't just pump water better, it literally restructured civic life. Operating a high-pressure boiler meant you needed specialized, highly trained engineers. Because one machine could replace dozens of exhausted manual pumpers, cities no longer needed these massive, chaotic crowds of competing volunteer companies who, by the way, often ended up brawling in the streets over who got the glory of fighting the fire. The steam engine basically forced municipal authorities to establish the disciplined, paid professional public fire departments that we completely take for granted today. So, what you should really take away from this explainer is that our modern fire departments are not just a given. They are the hard-won result of a millennia-long civilizational struggle against our most chaotic element. We have moved from ancient Rome, where wealthy men like Crassus would literally buy burning buildings at a massive discount before ordering his men to put out the fire, through the desperate medieval bucket brigades, to the private insurance marks of London, all the way to viewing fire protection as a fundamental, universal human right.
I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. We've essentially engineered our way out of the terror of the historical fire through science and civic organization. We no longer sleep with that profound, gnawing anxiety of our medieval ancestors. But how fragile is that security really? If the grid went down and the municipal taps suddenly ran dry tomorrow, how quickly would we regress? Would you be ready to grab a leather bucket and stand on the line for your neighbor? Thank you so much for exploring this history of human survival with me. Until next time, keep questioning the world around you.